Rain hammered against the cracked tin roof, drumming a frantic rhythm that matched the old man's heartbeat. His hands shook, knuckles white as he clutched the remnants of his coat, worn thin from years of labor and cold nights. The sheriff's boots echoed in the muddy courtyard, each step heavier than the last, carrying a weight that wasn't just authority. It was menace. "A move along," the sheriff barked, voice sharp and cruel, a smirk curling beneath his stained mustache. The old man's eyes didn't flinch, even as the sheriff's hand swung back and landed on his shoulder with a harsh smack, reverberating through his chest like a bone-deep warning. Hidden in the shadows, a German shepherd tilted its head, ears flicking at the sound of injustice. Its amber eyes glimmered under the dim light, muscles coiled like silent lightning. Every growl simmered beneath the surface, a tethered storm ready to break. The old man didn't notice the dog watching, but in that instant the world shifted. The subtle tension of breath, rain, and heartbeats intertwined, and something unspoken began to stir, a quiet reckoning waiting to unfold. The rain had been falling for hours, relentless and cold, drumming against the rusted tin roofs of the small, forgotten town. Puddles pooled in every hollow of the courtyard, reflecting the gray sky and ripples that trembled under the wind. Somewhere, a loose shutter banged against its frame, a hollow echo of the turmoil stirring inside the old man. He moved slowly, each step heavy, boots sinking into the mud as he carried a basket of firewood. His shoulders were bent, spine curved with the weight of age, each motion deliberate but trembling with exhaustion. And somewhere nearby, in the shadowed corner of the yard, the German shepherd watched. Its body was taut, ears pricked, amber eyes tracking the old man's every motion, reading the rhythm of fear and caution in the slight tremor of his hands. The dog had seen enough in its years with the police to recognize tension, to sense the oppressive weight of authority, poised to strike. The sheriff emerged suddenly from the doorway, boots slapping wet wood, a dark figure moving with a casual arrogance that seemed to defy the storm itself. He carried a presence that commanded attention, one built not on respect but on fear, and the German shepherd's hackles rose instinctively, muscles coiling beneath sleek fur. The sheriff's gaze landed on the old man, and for a moment the world seemed to constrict, the wind silencing, the rain sharpening into tiny, stabbing needles. There was a tension in the air, unspoken but palpable, a friction that could ignite at the slightest provocation. The dog growled low in its throat, almost inaudible over the rain, a warning woven with years of training and instinct. "A move along," the sheriff barked, voice rough, carrying the sting of contempt. The old man's hands clenched around the basket, knuckles whitening, but he did not respond. He had endured enough to know that submission often invited worse cruelty, but the sheriff's patience was thin. He stepped closer, looming over the old man, the shadow of his broad shoulders swallowing the small figure. Then, with a sudden motion, his hand struck the old man's shoulder. The sound of flesh meeting flesh cut through the rain, echoing off the courtyard walls like a drum of violence. The old man stumbled slightly, the basket tilting, sticks clattering to the ground, but he held himself upright, a flicker of quiet defiance in his eyes. The German shepherd's reaction was immediate. It surged from its hiding place with the precision of a shadow given life, paws splashing through water, ears flattened, body moving like coiled lightning. Its growl deepened, resonant and threatening, vibrating through the very ground beneath their feet. The sheriff froze, uncertainty flickering across his face for the first time, a hesitation that smelled faintly of fear. The dog's eyes were fixed, unblinking, every muscle attuned to the possibility of movement, the potential for harm to the old man. For the first time, the old man became aware of the presence beside him, a silent guardian whose loyalty was as instinctive as the blood running through its veins. The rain fell harder now, drumming against the dog's fur and the old man's shoulders alike, turning the courtyard into a theater of tension, each droplet a metronome for the heartbeat of the scene. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the sheriff's face, twisted in irritation and unease, the dog's body casting a long, fearsome shadow that stretched toward him like the promise of retribution. And in that suspended moment, a strange quiet settled over the yard. The wind stilled for a heartbeat, the only sounds the dog's restrained growl and the soft plop of water dripping from eaves. The old man's breath came slow and deliberate, not in fear, but in recognition, a shared acknowledgement between him and the animal, that justice, even silent and patient, had a presence here, watching, waiting, ready. In the shadows, the dog's amber eyes reflected the storm, the old man, and the looming figure of authority. It was more than vigilance. It was understanding, a quiet comprehension that some moments demanded courage beyond speech, that protection could be given without question, without reward, simply because it was needed. And so the three stood there, the corrupt sheriff, the trembling old man, and the watchful dog, as the rain continued its relentless descent, each heartbeat, each drop of water, marking the slow, inevitable rise of a force that would not be ignored. After the confrontation, the courtyard felt empty, though the storm still raged above. The old man shuffled inside his small, weather-beaten home, the wooden floor groaning under each step, mud still clinging to the soles of his boots. He moved slowly, carefully placing the firewood on its rack, every motion deliberate, each breath measured. His hands still shook, not just from cold, but from the sting of humiliation, the echo of the sheriff's hand on his shoulder, lingering like a bruise in memory. Outside, the rain drummed steadily against the walls, a relentless metronome marking the passage of moments that seemed to stretch forever. Somewhere in the shadows, the German shepherd waited, hidden behind the corner of the old shed, its muscles coiled, its senses stretched taut. The dog had followed every step, every tremor of fear, every flash of quiet defiance. It was silent, patient, a presence unnoticed yet profoundly aware, reading the currents of human emotion as precisely as a trained officer reading a crime scene. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil within. Gusts rattled the window panes, carrying the wet, earthy scent of mud and decay, and the soft hiss of rain filled the spaces between the old man's cautious movements. The dog's ears flicked at every sound, the shuffle of a boot, the soft creak of hinges. Each subtle noise was significant, a story in itself, a map of the old man's vulnerability and resilience. It was as if the world had contracted, isolating them in a bubble of tension where justice, patience, and instinct intertwined. The old man did not notice the dog, yet every instinct in the animal's body was dedicated to him, a quiet promise to intervene if the world turned cruel again. Time passed in a suspended haze. The old man moved through small rituals, fetching water from the well, sweeping the courtyard, securing the doors. Each task carried weight, a measure of endurance and dignity in the face of helplessness. The dog trailed at a distance, careful not to alert him, but its gaze never wavered, a silent thread connecting them through shared tension and unspoken understanding. Every so often, the dog's growl rose softly, a low rumble that carried through the wet air like a warning to the unseen forces that might approach. It was not anger, it was recognition, a tethered storm of readiness, controlled yet undeniable. The sheriff's presence lingered in the shadows of memory, a heavy weight pressing down despite his absence. The old man flinched at imagined footsteps, at the echo of his name spoken with scorn. Each flinch, each moment of hesitation was catalogued by the dog, a pattern of fear, a pulse of vulnerability. The storm outside and the storm within the old man mirrored each other, a rhythm the dog understood in a way words could never convey. It circled the perimeter of the yard, moving with fluid precision, ears rotating like radar dishes, nose catching the scent of the approaching world, measuring threats that the human could not yet see. Evening fell, and the storm began to ease, leaving the courtyard in a soft gray light, puddles reflecting a sky streaked with fading clouds. The dog settled beneath the old oak tree near the fence, body coiled like a spring, eyes fixed on the door through which the old man would eventually emerge. The quiet between them was a language of its own, trust unspoken, vigilance unwavering, a promise that courage could come in forms not easily recognized. The old man remained unaware, moving through his small chores, unaware that salvation already watched from the shadows. The chapter closes on this silent bond, one forged in fear, tempered by patience, and anchored in instinct. The dog a steadfast witness to the slow unfolding of justice yet to arrive. Days bled into weeks, and the storm's memory lingered longer than the storm itself. The old man moved through his life with careful precision, each step deliberate, as though every moment demanded proof that he could endure, that dignity was not yet lost. His hands, calloused and cracked, bore the invisible marks of humiliation. The sheriff's slap, the echo of authority, wielded like a weapon. Yet through it all, he persisted, fetching water from the shallow well at dawn, carrying wood heavier than his bones might bear, and sweeping the courtyard in slow, rhythmic motions that seemed to stitch his fractured courage back together. The German shepherd followed at a distance, Unseen, a shadow tethered to the rhythm of the old man's life. Every movement was observed with precise calculation. How the man's fingers trembled when he lifted the bucket. How his eyes darted toward doors and windows as if threats might lurk there. The dog cataloged every nuance, every pulse of fear, and every flicker of resilience, absorbing the story in silence, waiting for the moment action might be required. The weather mirrored their emotional landscape. Gray clouds hung low, pressing down on the earth, while wind rattled the loose boards of the old shed, whispering threats that the human could only imagine. The scent of wet soil and decay mingled with the sharper tang of iron from the old man's tools, creating a sensory map of struggle. The dog's ears flicked at every sound, the creak of a step, the sigh of wind through the fence, the distant clatter of boots on mud. Each whisper of the world was a signal. Patterns of danger, small or large, that required vigilance. It was in these quiet, suspended moments that courage began to form. Not loud or brash, but precise, steady, anchored in instinct and readiness. One afternoon, a stumble shattered the fragile calm. The old man misjudged a step on the slick stone near the well, his foot sliding, body pitching forward. A sharp cry escaped his lips, swallowed quickly by the rain, and the basket of water splashed to the ground, sending droplets arching like tiny crystal prisms into the gray light. The German shepherd exploded from its concealment, a fluid motion of controlled force, paws splashing through the puddles, muscles coiled for action. It reached the old man in seconds, nudging him upright with careful pressure, placing itself between him and the world in a protective arc. There was no hesitation, no deliberation, only the absolute clarity of instinct and loyalty. The old man froze at first, astonishment breaking through the residual fear. But then his fingers rested on the dog's damp fur, a quiet acknowledgement of the guardian he had never sought but desperately needed. The storm began to ease, letting through shafts of weak, slanted light that reflected in puddles and glistened on the dog's coat. Its eyes remained fixed on the perimeter of the yard, scanning for threats invisible to the human eye. The old man followed the dog's gaze, realizing for the first time that some force, some presence, had been watching over him all along, quietly waiting, silently enduring, ready to act when courage alone might fail. In that moment, a subtle transformation occurred. Fear did not vanish, but it was tempered by trust, and the bond between man and dog grew unspoken yet profound, a lifeline forged through weeks of observation, patience, and shared quiet endurance. Evening fell, turning the courtyard into a palette of muted grays and shadowed corners. The old man retrieved his firewood, the dog shadowing every motion, a sentinel of patience and precision. Every droplet of rain on the ground, every creak of the fence, every whisper of wind became a dialogue of survival and care between them. The chapter closes with the two figures, human and canine, moving together through the dimming light, one bearing the weight of memory and fear, the other carrying the assurance that courage can be silent, precise, and patient, yet more formidable than brute force. The world outside may still be cruel, but within this small, rain-soaked courtyard, vigilance and loyalty had begun to tip the scales. The rain returned that evening with a fury that seemed almost sentient, slashing against the crooked rooftops, splashing into puddles that reflected fractured shards of light. The courtyard became a theater of shadows, every dripping corner alive with anticipation. The old man moved slowly, cautiously, aware that the sheriff might return at any moment. His heart thrummed in his chest like a drumbeat echoing in an empty hall, each pulse a reminder of vulnerability. The basket of firewood weighed heavy in his hands, but heavier still was the memory of humiliation, the sting of injustice lingering like a bruise that refused to fade. The German shepherd followed at a measured distance, muscles coiled, paws sinking slightly into the mud, eyes sharp and unblinking. Every instinct in its body hummed with the knowledge that the moment of reckoning was near. The air was thick with tension, wet with rain, and alive with the electricity of impending confrontation. From the shadows of the town road, a familiar, oppressive figure emerged, the sheriff. His boots thudded against mud, each step a challenge, a reminder of unchecked authority. He approached with arrogance, unaware of the quiet storm that tracked him, every movement betraying a confidence that had no place in this yard tonight. The dog's ears pricked, its low growl a resonant thread beneath the roar of the rain, vibrating with controlled menace. Its body shifted into readiness, tail stiff, eyes fixed on the man who had brought fear into the old man's life. The sheriff paused for a fraction of a second, feeling the tension, but shrugged it off, mistaking silence for weakness. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the yard with stark, white light. The old man froze, basket halfway lifted, heart hammering against his rib cage. He saw the sheriff's shadow stretching toward him, the storm reflecting every inch of tension in sharp relief. But he was no longer entirely alone. The dog surged forward, moving with fluid precision, its growl deep and authoritative, cutting through the rain like a bell of warning. The sheriff's eyes widened in a flicker of surprise, his arrogance faltering as instinct met instinct. The German shepherd's stance was firm and unyielding, its presence an unspoken demand that justice be recognized, that cruelty could no longer dominate this space. Every sound became amplified. The slap of rain, the squelch of boots in mud, the soft crackle of lightning in the clouds. The sheriff lifted a hand, but the dog's growl deepened, resonant and controlled, a reminder that power is not only measured by authority, but by vigilance, loyalty, and courage. The old man, chest tight, felt a surge of clarity. He did not need to fight, to strike back, to plead. Presence and trust had intervened, a force beyond words, beyond reason. The sheriff faltered, hesitation creeping into his movements, and the rain seemed to intensify, as if nature itself was marking the balance of power shifting. The standoff stretched seconds into eternities. The dog's amber eyes never wavered, every muscle a testament to restraint and readiness, every movement precise, deliberate. The sheriff's shadow receded as he recognized the unyielding force before him. A quiet but undeniable authority born not of law, but of loyalty, instinct, and courage. Finally, he turned, retreating into the storm, diminished by the realization that fear alone could not dominate forever. The dog remained poised, chest heaving, body tense but controlled, watching until the threat was gone. The old man lowered his basket, shoulders straightening, chest rising, with the first real breath of relief he had known in weeks. The rain softened to a drizzle, dripping from leaves and shingles, a quiet hymn of survival and justice. The dog padded closer, nudging the old man gently, a silent acknowledgement of their shared victory. Eyes met, and in that gaze was understanding. Courage is not always loud, and justice is sometimes carried on four legs, silent, patient, and unwavering. In the courtyard, softened by the fading storm, human and dog stood side by side, two figures bound by loyalty, vigilance, and the quiet triumph of resilience over cruelty.